Most of us make music to create an emotional response, either in other people or in ourselves. And as electronic musicians, sometimes the tools that we use can make our music feel a little bit too sterile, a little bit too stale and lifeless. Like when I started making music with a computer, I felt like everything that I was making was made in a hospital. Like everything just felt completely dead, too perfect, too mathematically precise. And that's usually when people immediately jump to dequantizing all of their MIDI and trying to humanize things by just adding randomness everywhere. But if we don't really understand what makes something feel musical versus lifeless, then we can end up with music that still feels lifeless, but is now also sloppy. And I don't think that's what we want. Today, I'll show you 3 things that actually will make a difference, and how to use them to bring some life, bring some humanity back to those loops or unfinished projects and songs that you have sitting on your hard drive. Every once in a while, I'll go to Reddit to look for ideas, get some sense of what the average musician is struggling with currently. And in one thread, someone was addressing this topic. And their solution was just be sure to dequantize everything. Never quantize, don't use quantization. In fact, actively randomize how your notes line up so that they never sound quantized. And the whole thing was under the guise of we don't want it to sound robotic or sound too perfect. And they even left an example of their more human version of some chord progression they had done. Now, what they were saying sounded good in theory. But when I listened to their example, it did not sound more human. It sounded sloppy. And right away, I noticed a bigger issue that had nothing to do with the quantization that they could have addressed, that would have made it sound more natural, more musical. Not the quantization, the voicing. So the velocity of their bass notes were often louder than everything that happened above them. And sometimes the inner notes of the chords would pop out of the texture. Random velocities, I got the sense they had just randomized everything, including the velocity. And so these random notes within the melody, which was the top voice, would jump out occasionally too, and it just felt really out of place. As a pianist, I'm going to use piano as an example. As a pianist, we can play certain notes, certain parts, more loudly than others. Not every instrument is velocity sensitive. A piano is. And there's typically a hierarchy of importance that we place on certain voices. Typically, that's going to be top voice is number 1. That's usually where the melody lives, and that's usually what we want to hear the most. So we bring that out physically. Second most important, the bottom voice. That's the foundation of our harmony, the foundation of the chords. And then third, and least importantly, is all that stuff that happens in the middle. Even if there's more activity in the middle, we probably don't want to hear that as much as the outer parts. By the way, just a bonus tip, this also worked linearly. As I mentioned, certain notes of their melody were sticking out. With a melody, a linear part, a linear line, it's kind of redundant, we have to think about how each note relates to the note that came before it and the note that came after it. I'm speaking about velocity again. So we don't want one note to jump out unless we intentionally want that to happen. We don't want things happening by accident because we don't even realize it's happening. Because music is not like a painting. We don't just sit there and look at it all at once. It's scrolling past us on a timeline. So it is linear. We have to think about how things happen in relation to what came before and what is coming next. And that is certainly the case for the velocity of our melodies, the shape, dynamic shaping of our melodies, as well as the vertical shaping of which part is more important than the other parts. Well, what does this have to do with electronic music exactly? Well, we are making intentional decisions. If you have layered synth parts that are all trying to occupy the same space, they cannot all be equal to each other. You have to choose which one is more important and which things are least important. Your entire production, your entire mix hinges upon this. If you are trying to have everything vying for the same space, it's not going to work. And we often think of this as a problem, but it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to have your parts conversing with each other. You get to decide which one gets to step to the front of the stage at which point and deliver that line that you want to emphasize. The spotlight is on that. It's like this camera. It is focused on me right now. If I do this, it's going to focus on my hand. Come on, camera. Work for me. And what happens to me when my hand moves forward? I get blurry. It can't focus on more than one thing at a time. That's good. We like that. We like being shown visually what to focus on. Our ears are exactly the same. We have to show the listener, show ourselves as the composer what is most important and what is less important at any given time. And we can allow those things to step forward at different moments, and that makes our music feel conversational. It makes it feel more natural, more, dare I say, human and less stagnant. Now, this feels a bit second nature for orchestral players or pianists because we have to physically do these things. And a conductor is going to tell certain sections of the orchestra, shut up, be quiet. Don't play as loudly here because I'm listening for the oboe right now. And the strings, you are absolutely burying the oboe. So back off a little bit. You have to physically do these things. But if you're just clicking around in a DAW and you're only using a computer and you're not familiar with that process, that it is something we have to think about and have to physically do, sometimes we don't even think about these things. Like even for me, sometimes I lose track of that when I'm just staring at a screen. So it's an easy concept to skip over the way that we often make music these days, but I think it may be the single most important thing you can consider. What is important right now and what is least important right now? And how can I have those things play off of each other in interesting ways? That's going to bring a lot of humanity to your work. A lot of electronic musicians try to kind of force expressivity into their music by suddenly speeding up or slowing down the tempo in ways that don't always make a lot of sense. And it sounds a bit forced then, and then it has the opposite effect of what we want. We want our music to have expression, to feel more human, but if we force it, suddenly the opposite happens and it feels just out of place. But if you can create a musical phrase that has a nice shape to it, a lot of these things take care of themselves. And the shape of the phrase actually dictates what you do with slight tempo variations, dynamic changes, some of the stuff we just talked about, all of these things. They're a natural result of what the shape tells us to do. There's a reason that melodies are so often placed in the top voice, like I've mentioned in piano music. It's because typically, in the range of human hearing, that's the area, the area of the frequency spectrum that we hear as louder, we perceive as louder, is in that range. So composers lean into that, like they're writing for humans, so that makes a lot of sense. And if we perceive higher notes as being louder, then it makes sense to use that as a tool and write the climax of your phrase to go up, to literally climb. And if you do that, it's naturally going to stand out. And so then you don't have to force dynamics to happen, they just kind of happen. This is not a new concept. Bach and composers from the Baroque period, guess what? They didn't have pianos like we do today. A lot of the keyboard instruments back then did not have velocity sensitivity at all. Organs, Nope. Harpsichord? Nope. Like, very different set of tools that they had back then. So they had to bring out parts in different ways by writing very intentionally. So shaping their phrases, putting the climax as the higher points of the phrases, was a tool that they were actively using to clearly show the listener what was most important. Funny enough, back then, there also was not a lot of speeding up and slowing down within a section or phrase. A lot of these changes would happen very suddenly. So what would they do? Well, they would use very strategic rhythmic changes, rhythmic movement, like going from 8th notes to 16th notes. They would save those 16th notes, that extra movement, for parts that they wanted to emphasize or set apart. And so if you're trying to shape a loop, think about, does it go up and then come back down? What is the overall shape of it? What is the overall arc of it? Zoom out and view it as a whole instead of getting so lost in the micro moves. And then ask yourself, what is that telling me to do musically? Maybe if there is a slight tempo fluctuation, very slight, very subtle, so that it doesn't become sloppy, maybe when it climbs, I want to push the tempo just ever so slightly. Maybe when it comes back down, I could pull it back. Like at the end of the phrase, I could relax the tempo just a bit. And obviously the shapes of your phrases, if you're dealing with synth parts that aren't quite as expressive or velocity sensitive as a piano, for example, you can use a lot of the same tools that they used back in the 17th and 18th century. They still work. Just make your climax go higher. It still works. My advice for getting more musical in your electronic music is stop listening to electronic music for a little while. Listen to how great performers play acoustic instruments, because acoustic instruments have very specific limitations and constraints. And those performers, the best ones, have figured out a way to coax all of the expression they can within those constraints. It's a very limited set of tools that a performer has when they're just playing a single instrument. Even if you don't play that instrument, you can learn a tremendous amount just by listening to the choices they make with the limitations that they are given. Due to the way that most sequencers are designed these days, it's extremely easy to fall into patterns of 4, 8, 16, that are incredibly repetitive. And so then what do? We try to go the opposite way, and we never repeat anything. So we either end up stuck in the loop or we overcorrect and we abandon repetition, which actually is a really powerful tool. So let's learn how to use it effectively instead of just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The moment you repeat a phrase or a section, which by the way, if you've shaped it well and it feels more musical, you probably won't get tired of hearing it as often. But once you repeat anything, you've started to establish a pattern. Patterns are good. Patterns let us know where we are. We like patterns. This was a fascinating thing in my recent composition cohort, which, by the way, if you want to join the wait list for the one in January that's coming up, that link is down in the description below. It's a really good time. Over 6 weeks, we just deep dive into a lot of this stuff. It's really, really fun. During the last cohort, we discovered that even if the person was writing in a more dissonant harmonic language, like there was more complex harmonies going on, the moment that they would repeat something, even if it was very dissonant, suddenly we felt very grounded and like we knew where we were. It's like, oh, I remember that because you've established a pattern with it. And suddenly it feels familiar and intentional. So once we zoom out and start to view repetition as creating patterns, then we get to choose where we want to place contrast, which then also feel more effective and more intentional if we don't overuse it. Let's say we want to set up a pattern of A, B, A. So really just 2 sections, 2 phrases, 2 loops, however you want to think of it. Now, this is a very common and very effective pattern, effective form, structure. And to create contrast for that B section, the one section that's different than the others, we probably don't need to change as much as we think we do. If you have a chord progression, start by simply changing the bass note, because the bass provides the foundation for all of the harmony that stacks on top of it. That can completely transform a section. Change the shape of the end of the phrase. So if your A phrase goes down at the end, just take your B phrase up at the end. And this is where we get into like question and answer sort of terminology, where it feels more conversational, like a sentence structure. You could try changing the harmonic rhythm of the B phrase. So if your bass moved in quarter notes, you could move faster or slower in the B section. So half notes, eighth notes, but just try one thing at a time. And then if you haven't changed everything all at once, your B section is still going to feel connected. It's still going to have some DNA from the A section, but our ear is going to be drawn to the changes that you did make. So when you experiment with writing a B section or writing any kind of contrasting thing, don't throw everything away and feel like you have to start over. Look at what you've already done and say, how can I change one thing or two things, and just alter it a bit so that it feels connected but also feels contrasting. By the way, if you found this helpful and you haven't really thought about music in these terms, in these ways before, you're really going to enjoy the composition cohort that I'm running in January. It's coming up. We go through a 6-week program that I've put together that gives you specific exercises, compositional prompts that you can work through with a group and with me. We have weekly Zoom sessions, we have exercises to do, we have community support during that time. It's really been a lot of fun, and it's why I want to keep this going into next year. I've done 2 of them in 2025. Basically, I'll teach you how to think not just like a producer or an electronic musician, but like a composer. And as you've seen from this video, a lot of these concepts translate really, really well, even if you exclusively make electronic music. Down in the description, there's a waitlist link for that if you want to be the first to know as soon as tickets go on sale. I'll see you soon.